Hi guys, welcome to Shanty Shop Mechanic. My name is Patrick, and in this week's episode I'm going to be diving into this abandoned Briggs cylinder mower. This thing hasn't run since the 90s. It's missing the coil and the engine is stuck. So let's see if I can get this thing turning and burning. As you can see behind the mower I have my handy dandy table. Unfortunately I can't use it for this because this thing weighs about 5.5 tons. So it's going to be an on the ground episode. As you can see, I've taken the liberty of oiling all the chains, making sure that they can actually turn over. This will see solid the cylinder, but now if I apply my foot to it I can actually get it to turn around. That's a big improvement that I've made off camera. Oiling all those chains are quite greasy. Again, this thing hasn't run since the 90s, and all the cables work bar the throttle one. As you can see, the cable here is just bound up and it's actually just moving this. So I'm just going to replace that in due time. As you can see here, there is no coil cable, so I need to find one alternative one for this. And actually, speaking of which, I'm after just spotting that this is missing a head bolt. Oh good. The more I look at this thing, the better it gets. And as I was mentioning about the seized engine aspect, if I try to turn it over, it actually drags the mower with it. I'm going to need to see if I can resolve that. Hopefully it's the recoil. I'm guessing it's probably not. This machine was so bad that in order to be able to unscrew the air filter and the fuel cap, I had to douse them in oil and then actually apply a locking jaws to it to actually get these things to unravel. As you can hear, it sounds quite crusty still, and I'll just give you a quick view of the air filter before I go onto the fuel tank. Okay. Yeah, that is properly bad. Yeah, a lot of surface rust, but not a big deal, I guess. But the air filter it's done for. It's an accordion right now. Inside the fuel tank, it's not too bad. There's a bit of surface rust. Hopefully I can show you with the aid of my phone. That's kind of the best option there. You can kind of see, yeah, it's actually quite bad. Really bad. It's either fuel tank's going to come off, or I find an auxiliary tank just to be able to see if I can get this thing to run. So I've removed the three 11mm bolts that hold this recoil on, and I'm going to try and jimmy it off to see. Hopefully the recoil is here and it's just a cable that's missing, but I don't know, I highly doubt that. So. Okay, right. I'm just going to check the recoil quickly here to see. Okay, so there's no particular issue with the recoiling or going back. It's a bit stiff, but this isn't jamming, so it must be the engine. Okay, so the engine actually does turn over. I'm not quite sure what was causing it to bind or lock up. Oh, what in the name of God? I have another spark plug here. Okay, see that coming because that was original. I didn't change that spark plug at all. I did take it off to oil the cylinder. What I'm doing now is trying to feel for some compression. You might be able to hear the engine, the sound of air being forced in and out of the engine as I turn it over. If you listen. Okay, yeah, there's not a great deal of compression in this machine. For the moment of truth, will this coil fit the two bolt holes here for the coil assembly? And it does. Excellent. So what that means now that I just need to find two bolts that can go into these holes here to hold this coil into place. And to set the distance between the flywheel and the coil, I just put a card in between. I'll add later in the video. Just as a close-up of what I was talking about, here is the flywheel, and that spins around, and there's a magnet here, and what the coil is meant to do is meant to be located here. It's bolted up into those two holes. and when that spins around it generates a spark. As you can see here, these old Briggs & Stratton engines have this kind of ratchet style thing. It's for the recoil, so when it is turned over this way, it locks into place, and then going the opposite direction, it free falls pretty much. What happens with these is when they get old, nobody really looks after them or like lubricates them, and they seize up and they can actually rip out of your hand. So to prevent injuries, I've actually gone and just opened this up. There's a little hole here that I sprayed a bit of WD-40 into there, so it seems to spin quite freely now. I have the piece of paper in between the coil and the flywheel. I like to use the magnet of the coil to help sandwich down the coil, so it draws it closer, so it just sits there nicely. I'm going to tighten up these bolts and it should be able to work. I have a pull cord here around the flywheel, however it should be fine, and the place to be looking is the spark plug here to see if there's actually any spark. I've gone ahead and done the correct thing and put the coil back on. I've just mocked it up at the moment. The bolts are not in place, but it's staying where it is. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over, and hopefully where my thumb is, you should see where the spark is coming out of the spark plug. Okay. Oh yes. Okay, we got spark. It's been proven quite difficult to show you where the spark is on this machine, but I'm hoping with one or two passes you might be able to see it pop up. It is actually getting stronger. With the spark plug snug, I'm just going to put a bit of juice into it now and see will it actually pop off. So. Okay, that's a little bit too much, but enough to... Oh, okay. It definitely tried, but okay, I can actually take that off. Put that there. Yeah. Make sure again to remove any debris that might go into the intake. Oh wow, okay. I need to go and dig into this further, see what the hell's going on with it, and get back to you. So I'm just going to put a tiny little bit into it. Okay, that's quite a bit. Okay, I would say I've definitely flooded that engine. So after 10 minutes of leaving it alone, after being flooded, I'm going to give it another whack. See, hopefully it can actually run for a few seconds. Okay. No, it appears not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the petrol directly into the engine as opposed into the carb. Spoiler alert, I actually did get this thing to run briefly off camera, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to do it for you, and then we can kind of dig into more of the important aspects such as the carb and really seeing if this thing can cut grass once again, and if it can, she's going. Poured petrol into the engine, and I'm going to turn it over now and see what happens. Hopefully it should show it running for you guys, and then after that I'm going to move into the carb and removing and cleaning the fuel tank. The fuel tank isn't actually connected to the carb. The fuel line is actually disconnected just as it gets into the carb. That might have actually been a good thing, and I'm hoping that the carb should be relatively clean, because if I can't save this tank, it's not a big deal. I can just use an auxiliary tank fed into the carb and I can go from there with it. We'll give it a go. Okay, so you can see it trying to burn off the petrol. try one more time. Okay. Getting better. Oh my God. So, as you can see, the choke mechanism working there nicely, and where the air comes in, when the choke is employed, the air comes in here instead. So I'm just going to pry this open. I actually was able to get it released, and quite an interesting setup here. When I first sucked it in through the intake, I could see light coming through, and I was like very concerned because I didn't know if it actually had a bowl assembly in it. And when I actually took it apart, you can actually see it's quite a weird setup from a conventional carb, where the air comes in through here and the petrol pools in here, and by virtue of the air being forced in through here, that's what allows it to be taken up. The hole, I can see, okay, yeah, you can see it there. You can see it poking through the actual bowl itself. Petrol flows down through there, and then it stays in the outer part here. And this hole that you can see, this is meant to have a little valve on it, an air screw mixture to be precise, and it meters the amount of petrol that can go through this here too. So yeah, quite an interesting setup. A lot better quality in this than a lot of newer carbs. It's been a hot minute since I was last at this machine. It's actually been over a week, and haven't put the carb back on, as you can see. And what I'm not going to use is the fuel tank. I'm going to rig up a auxiliary fuel tank and put it higher than the engine and see how I get on from there. The reason why I'm not using this fuel tank is it looks very nice here. However, when you turn it around, it looks like a biscuit tin from World War II. Somebody has put a lot of filler or putty, something along the lines of that, in order to seal it up, but it hasn't worked. And as you can see here, you can see the rust is actually coming through the putty, and there's just so many pinholes in the whole lot that I'm not actually going to bother trying repairing this. It's too dangerous, and it's just a waste of time. However, I am going to put it back onto the machine. It makes it look aesthetically pleasing, having the fuel tank there. And I'm going to put as I said in the previous clip, I'm going to put an auxiliary fuel tank on it. Half an hour of jerry rigging this machine. I've actually fitted a auxiliary fuel tank here. See, I have the fuel line going straight from the carb all the way up, kind of zip tied to one of the cables, lightly zip tied just to keep it out of harm's way from the chain, and making sure that it's a good distance away from the exhaust too. And then coming up here, all the way up here, and then just bowing down a little bit so that it can get good fuel flow, because if I go any tighter, you can kind of see it goes up a bit. And then just followed by the small little Tecumseh fuel tank zip tied up here. This is a temporary fixture. Obviously I'm not going to rely on these for long term, because it's just not safe, and it doesn't look very nice either, but it will get us to where we need to go with this machine. So I filled it up, and it seems to be not leaking, which is great. Get it going. Okay, interesting. Doesn't seem to want to pop off just yet. No sign of it. Even seem to be any smoke coming from it. So I might just need to pour a little bit of petrol down the intake. Just a smidge now, Patrick. Just a smidge. Okay. So I think I might put a bit of oil in the cylinder, see if there is an issue with compression, because it seems that the harder I pull it, I know obviously it spins faster, but it seems to be just doing that. So I put a bit of oil in this cylinder and it turned over quite well. However, there is one little issue. Earlier on in the video, if I bring you over here, you can see that there is a bulb missing and smoke seems to be coming out of it. So I have a severe lack of compression from this engine, and I'm probably going to have to pull the head off in order to maybe see if I can get this bulb tightened down or remove the broken stud in it. As you can see. Okay, so I think that's the next hurdle, is lack of compression. I'm going to have to get a bit cute with this engine because I can't actually remove the head off this, as these bolts are not turning. Now I can put a spanner on them or whatever, or a socket. I tried to turn them to loosen them and they're not budging. And if I go any further with them, I'm going to end up in the same scenario as the previous owner had with removing this head. I have zero idea why they wanted to remove the head. However, that's where we are at the moment. Puffing out here, and I don't know if it's going to have enough compression really. So that's the issue. Issue is compression now, nothing really else with this machine. It pops off quite nicely. I think I'm going to have to go with the nuclear option and put a bit of JB Weld down this hole. I'll just see if I can seal it up, and hopefully the tightness of this bolt here and this bolt here can create compression, because frankly there's no other way I can actually do this without, you know, taking the head off, maybe putting a new gasket on it, drilling out this. I could drill it out, but I don't really have the means of doing that, and I've tried drilling these out before and I've gone at an angle and it's just ruined the cast. So I'm going to try this option, and if not, I can always drill out the JB Weld either. I just want to get this running. It's the next day, and what I've done is I've applied epoxy or JB Weld to the cylinder head last night, and I've let it set. And if I just bring you around here, you can see it. It's quite hard. It's quite set now at this stage. It does seem to have good compression now. It's certainly a lot better. Put a little bit of oil in the cylinder again. Still has issues with compression. I don't know if it's still this being the issue or the actual rings are gone. Okay, that's the best it's run so far. At least the blades turn over. Hey guys, it's been well over a month since I've gone at this machine. Realistically speaking, I was hiding away from it. Didn't really want to go at it at all. But I've kind of drawn to the conclusion that this engine is pretty much kaput. I started it there about 20 minutes ago, and it was just eating its own oil. In order for me to be able to get this thing to cut grass again, it's going to be a bit of a rush job, and it's just going to be a one and done. To give you a quick idea as to what I'm talking about, it eating its own oil. You can see the carb here at the bottom of the carb, and you can just see all the oil just pouring out of it, and it's just somehow getting past the rings, and it's just been spat out through the carb, and you can actually even see it there. Don't mind this is just a bit of petrol spill, but this is the oil that's coming out of it, and that's a new oil. I've only put that in this month when I was going at it initially. This is kind of the end of this machine, really. It was the end of the machine about 30 years ago. This video has gone from let's get this old vintage machine running and let's cut along with it, to let's wake it up out of a coma and get it to do a 1,000-meter sprint. So I'll show you now how bad the engine is, using a little bit of engine starter, because this is the only thing that it can actually live on at this stage. very happy bunny. As you can see, the oil spill is getting a little bit bigger. The oil, when you move up towards the carb, is just like, you can just see the oil just pouring out of it. And it's a lovely grey colour, which is always a good sign of an engine eating itself. I'm going to clean this up and then we're going to move out. I spent the last 40 minutes dragging this behemoth out into a little bit of a meadow. We'll give it a challenge. There's really nothing left of this machine, so if anybody's wondering that I'm actually sending this thing to its death or there was so much more life to it, you're wrong. Unfortunately, the self-drive doesn't work on it, clutch is gone on it, the engine knocks pretty badly, and it weighs about 5 tons. Not exactly the most user-friendly piece of machinery out there. Let's get going. Okay, did a little bit. See if I could do some more. I'm honestly not feeling any compression from this machine anymore. I don't know how it's still popping off. I think that's it. That's going to do it for this episode. Not exactly the finale I was looking for from this machine, but it is what it is when it comes to these old vintage machines. It's a bit of a gamble, you know, especially with the previous life this machine probably lived, along with the many years that it's been out of commission too. Really, this thing is only a garden ornament at this stage, and I'm sure somebody will appreciate it for that. Stay tuned for the next video.